Believe it or not, there was a time in Mobile, Alabama when it was illegal to throw confetti or spray silly string. Yes, you heard that correctly. A playful toss of colored paper or a squirt of party foam could get you in trouble with the law. Today, we're diving deep into the curious world of strange American laws, and trust me, it gets even wackier from here. This particular law isn't about spoiling the fun, even though it sounds like it. It was introduced primarily to keep the streets and public areas clean. The chaos post-parade or festival with paper bits flying everywhere or sticky, gooey residue coating sidewalks was a nightmare for city services. Imagine sidewalks littered like the aftermath of a ticker tape parade, but without all the celebratory undertones. The cleanup efforts were exhausting and expensive, so the city decided to nip the problem at the source. This piece of legislation also reflects a fascinating trend seen in many local laws, where seemingly trivial issues are suddenly taken seriously because they clash with daily community life. But it highlights a bigger issue about how laws can spring up from common nuisances or public inconvenience, something that resonates in many local legal systems worldwide. Now, let's hop over to Vermont, where there's an age-old tradition that resulted in one of the oddest laws you'll ever encounter. In Vermont, women are required by law to obtain written permission from their husbands if they wish to wear false teeth. I kid you not. This law likely dates back to the 19th century, reflecting a time when women's rights were significantly restricted. While it may sound bizarre to us today, back then, it was viewed as a measure to ensure that financial priorities were set after all. False teeth were a significant investment. This law provides a window into the gender dynamics and societal expectations of the time. It reminds us how far we've come, and sometimes, how relics of the past can linger in our legal systems, often unenforced, merely as historical artifacts. Let's slide over to Arkansas for another doozy. Have you ever enjoyed a peaceful Saturday afternoon bath? Well, in Arkansas, a law existed that prohibited the practice of keeping your bathtub inside your house. Strange, right? The roots of this law can be traced back to sanitation concerns. During a particular period of our history, indoor plumbing was not what it is today. Bathing indoors wasn't commonplace, and public health officials were concerned about diseases spreading from stagnant water lying around in homes. Thus, people were encouraged, or rather legally required, to keep their bathing activities out in the open. Today, thankfully, the bathing habits have evolved, and so has the plumbing, and this law sits as a peculiar reminder of early 20th century sanitary fears. Heading to Connecticut, let's talk about the curious case of pickles and gravity. Yes, you heard correctly, pickles. The state has an odd regulation stating that for pickles to be legitimately sold, they must bounce. This all started with two pickle packers, no, it's not a tongue twister, who were once caught selling inedible pickles. Authorities were at a loss for how to describe the unacceptable product until a simple test was proposed. If a pickle could bounce 1 foot off the ground, it would then be deemed safe for human consumption. This has since morphed into regulatory folklore but underscores a simple principle of product quality assurance that remains relevant in food safety regulations, albeit in less bouncy forms. Switching gears to a lighter, woollier topic, let's visit Wyoming, where sheep have an unusual claim to fame. The state has a law prohibiting sheep from being penned in trucks that aren't marked with the word ostrich. You might be scratching your head in wonder at this point, but the law stemmed from a misprint that turned bureaucratic processes into a classic game of telephone. Initially meant as a safety regulation on transporting sheep, a copy error managed to pass unseen through legislative halls, until the final version was cemented as law. The confusion led many to think it was an attempt at humor, but it actually provided genuine insight into how even tiny errors can have lasting legal implications. As it stands, any sheep daring to travel across Wyoming without a properly marked vehicle might just find themselves in a legal pickle. Speaking of animals and transport, let's not skip over our feathered friends. In Hawaii, there's a law regarding carrying too many more than 15 dogs and cats in your vehicle at once. It's not just about cramming your SUV with a considerable amount of furry companions, either. This legislation initially arose to combat the abandonment of excessive pet ownership, ensuring a humane approach to animal welfare. The state aimed to curb stray animal numbers while promoting better transport practices for pet owners, ensuring not only the comfort and safety of the animals, but also the sanity of the driver. It's a uniquely Hawaiian approach to tackling stray populations, where paradise sometimes means keeping the drive to just a few companions. Crossing over temporarily into Nevada, did you know it is illegal to lie down on the sidewalk? While this might strike some as a cryptic way of promoting communal cleanliness or preventing sunbathers in odd places, the actual intent was far more connected to urban safety and public order. In cities like Las Vegas, where foot traffic and bustling tourism mix, ensuring pathways remain clear was essential. This law was part of broader attempts to address homelessness in urban areas, focusing instead on creating community spaces that don't become hazards or obstructions. While the law has met with varying degrees of success and critique, it makes for an interesting look at urban policy attempts to balance human needs with public order. Jumping back up north to Minnesota, here's a real juicy one. Every man's mustache was once illegal if he habitually kissed women in public. Yes, you wouldn't want your facial hair running afoul of the law. This was a quirky regulation stemming from health concerns tied directly to the early 20th century, when facial hair was repeatedly accused of harboring germs. The regulation was more health recommendation than actual enforced law. Still, it leaves a fascinating snapshot of the past and reflections on our perceptions of personal grooming and hygiene. Finally, onto California, land of sunshine, celebrities, and one rather odd law involving frogs. Any frogs that die during a jumping competition, please, we'll pause for you to recover from this startling revelation, cannot legally be eaten. This seemingly strange ordinance has a surprisingly logical origin. California hosts various frog jumping contests, famously inspired by the Mark Twain tale, The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County. Concern about fair competition, humane treatment, and cultural respect for intended fun without gastronomic sidelines fueled this regulation. It serves as a reminder of how events picked from fiction can shape real-world practices and implement protective measures around even the smallest participants. Before we backtrack, let's look at these laws and consider how, despite their quirks, they've been inspired by need or caution at some point. Every hilarious aspect stems from noble, if sometimes misunderstood, intents. Whether it's dealing with cleanliness and public order, engaging with unique regional challenges, or, like Vermont's forgotten denture policy, merely being remnants of a past era, these laws reveal fascinating stories about society's evolving spirit and the comedy of errors sometimes lurking within legislative halls. Every law also points toward a uniquely human approach to problem solving, often tethered to cultural, societal, or even economic stimulus that, over time, might feel bizarre but are meaningful in their context. For instance, the pickle bouncing law in Connecticut ends up being less about silliness and more about food safety, mushrooming into a tall tale told over spicy dill pickles in diners across the state. It's an amusing evolution of learning how societies work collaboratively to manage specific nuisances, even if it sometimes means needing bouncy produce. Sometimes these laws generate great stories, like that of Vermont's dental surprise. It might have seemed controlling, now reflecting more of a dance with economic conditions and marital collaboration back when women had limited financial autonomy. These remnants are insightful connections, pointing back toward periods where laws doubled as guardians, ensuring households navigated relatively new costs together. And then there are tales such as silly string outlawing in Mobile, Alabama, It's enlightening to note how this plays into community sanctity, particularly in places attempting to balance tourism and livable surroundings, countering what many might consider trivial. But what might seem a minor irritation could scale, with cities seeking innovative solutions to unwelcome clutter invading public spaces. It all draws back to priorities, planning around community impacts while navigating congested intersections through seasonal celebrations. But let's not overlook the seminal slapstick-esque nature of Wyoming's sheep transmission. Conceptualizing legislation around typographical nightmares adds a layer of narrative reminding us not everything within legal codifications was nurtured with serious pretense. It steadfastly persists as a whimsical monument to uncommon occurrences reshaping common narratives over time. It all begs to question, what can we discern about ourselves through these penalties? We've seen townscapes where keeping baths within boundaries mattered health-wise, state ambitions prioritizing the neat, vibrant look after seasonal festivals, and even intersections demanding sanitizer-scanning muttons. It forces us to revisit rules, examining change agents flowing through communal histories banding together behind strange statutes left standing. While juries surely chuckled, some seriously considered implications let us ponder glimpses into heritage rules keeping nations rolling along smoothly under common denominators, masking mischievous merriment amidst mirthful margins. Forever waltzing between recognizing troubling relics, laughing palates working through contexts birthing canvases left signed by yesteryear's architects navigating threshold experiences anew. So next time you hear about a strange law, take a moment to imagine the purpose it once served, the mindset it reflects, and the reasons behind its hilarious persistence. Each offers a historic breadcrumb trail, weaving humor and solemnity together, teaching us not just laws aren't driven by arbitrary accords alone, but by human experience layering intent beneath each idiosyncratic revelation. And there you have it, folks. From silly string to bouncy pickles, the hidden realms of America's legislative oddities shed light on society's peculiarities, and in many cases, offer an insightful trip back through time. Be sure to pause and relish these bizarre relics as you wander through the lesser-known annals of history. While they may seem simply silly, every weird law tells the story of a world beneath one continuously shaping, growing, and occasionally having a good chuckle at its rules. So, what's your favorite strange law? Share in the comments below. And if you love learning about mind-boggling facts and peculiar traditions, hit subscribe to join us on more journeys around the world's most bizarre legal landscapes.